Chapter 31. Void.
What is this?
Tahu spat in disgust. Oh, you have no idea how long I've waited to meet the six of you, Makuta said.
You're a Matoran?
Said Gali in disbelief. Surprised?
A little bit, yeah.
Pohatu replied. Why? Because I am that which you swore to protect. I presume that may be rather discouraging.
It's a trick, Tahu.
Kopaka interjected.
Kill him.
Makuta scoffed. Kill me? You cannot kill me. No more than you can kill the sea, or the wind, or the void.
You can't compare yourself to the sea. The sea bears life. The sea bore us.
Makuta chuckled. Did that comparison offend you, Toa of Water? But it's the truth nonetheless. Though you may try, I cannot be destroyed.
What are you?
What am I? As you can see, I am just a lowly Matoran. And thanks to the six of you, I now have nothing. I am nothing. An empty void lurking beneath the surface. But in due time, I will have everything. I will be everything.
Enough lies, Makuta.
Onua called.
You're no Matoran.
Makuta glanced down at his rusted and decayed right hand, which sported a faint etching of the Takoro Guard insignia barely visible among the dim light. I suspect there's no fooling you, is there? He said with a shrug. It was worth a shot.
So what are you? Really?
I am the shape in the gloom. I am the darkness that resides in the hearts through all of Matanui. I dwell in the dread stories woven by your Taraga as they gather around the village fires. The void is my instrument. The shadows are my servants. I am Makuta. The Toa collectively raised their weapons.
You're a disease on this island, and it's time to be rid of you.
The island will never be rid of me. The Matoran are builders. But look into their hearts and you'll find that they also have the power to destroy.
I am that power. I am destruction. And I will destroy you.
Makuta dropped to the ground before pouncing toward the Toa. Tahu swung his sword, narrowly missing his target. Makuta landed between the Toa, twitching in anticipation as he awaited the next attack. Kopaka was the next to strike, followed by Lewa only a second after. Makuta laughed as he dodged and leaped over every futile attempt even as the rest of the Toa joined in. He moved at such an impossible speed, twisting and contorting his body to flow around their weapons in a mocking dance. He weaved between Pohatu's legs before sweeping his feet from beneath him. He flipped over the Toa of stone as he fell to the ground, avoiding a swipe of Onua's claws as he drove his palm into Lewa's chest, launching him back against the floor. Gali rushed forward to attack with her hooks, but Makuta casually twisted his body to avoid their tips before leaping into the air and driving his knee into her mask, staggering her to her knees. Although he had the appearance of a rotting and decayed Matoran, he clearly possessed strength far greater than any of the Toa. Gali shook off the blow, standing up as she prepared to strike again, only to find that Makuta had disappeared.
Where did he go?
Gali asked as she held her hooks out, snapping her gaze in all directions as she searched for her target.
He's vanished,
Tahu replied.
Stay alert. He could be anywhere.
The six Toa paced the floor with their weapons held high, taking cautious steps as they searched for Makuta. Scampering footsteps were heard sporadically from every shadowy corner of the room, triggering numerous false alarms as the Toa kept their guard up. With his shield raised and blade ready, Kopaka activated the infrared lens on his Kanohi Ikaku, but found nothing. He turned his focus on a darting shadow up ahead, which only served as a distraction as Makuta dropped down from the ceiling. He landed on Kopaka's shoulders, hissing through the opened mouthport of his mask before sinking his teeth deep into Kopaka's neck. Kopaka swung his sword overhead, missing as Makuta leapt away into the shadows. He dropped his blade, cupping his palm over his wound. He felt the thick and cold sensation seeping between his fingers from the exposed organic muscle tissue as he fought through the pain.
Kopaka!
Gali called as she rushed to his side.
Are you alright?
I'm fine.
Kopaka growled as he scooped his sword from the ground. Makuta appeared again, rushing out from the shadows toward Lewa. Tahu caught a glimpse of his charge just in time to launch a fireball from the tip of his blade. For the first time since the fight began, the blast struck Makuta's side, sending him tumbling like a ragdoll across the pavement. Makuta's crackling and smoking body slid to a halt, twitching and convulsing on the floor.
It's over, Makuta!
Tahu called.
You're finished!
Makuta rolled over, slowly pushing himself onto his feet.
Why must you be so naive, Toa?
He threw his arms out to his sides, influencing the inner workings of the corroded shell to alter. The muscle tissue began to twist and deform, resulting in a grotesque and gut-wrenching orchestra of splitting joints, fracturing mechanical components and busting fibers. His shoulders and neck broke outward from his chest as his midsection parted and arched forward, while his fingers and lower limbs lengthened. His ankles snapped backward, forming extra joints on his legs. Within seconds, his already unsettling and unnatural appearance had completely transformed into a tormented and disgraceful abomination, held out by warping knots of glowing green muscle.
I am far from finished.
Kopaka shot an ice spear toward Makuta, only for him to dart away before it struck. Makuta bounded far into the air, clinging against the wall and slinking backward toward the ceiling. The other Toa began firing blasts of elemental power toward their target, missing by great measures as Makuta darted across every corner of the room with rapid animalism. He dropped down to the floor, swiftly spidering toward his next target. Onua slammed his fists into the ground, opening the floor in an attempt to trap the atrocious shadow. Makuta hopped over the opening crevice, landing behind the Toa of Earth. Onua spun around with a swipe of his claws before Makuta caught his wrist. Even with his Kanohi Pikari activated, he struggled to push his arm forward. Makuta appeared unfazed by the display of strength, even as the joints of his own arm audibly ruptured and creaked beneath Onua's strain. As the other Toa rushed forward to assist, Makuta yanked Onua off his feet, tossing him into Pohatu before ducking under an incoming swing of Tahu's sword. Kopaka narrowly blocked the strike of Makuta's splintering claws, causing shards of them to break off from his hands. Makuta ignored the mutilation and turned to deliver a vigorous kick into Gali's chest. Even as the Toa of Water was knocked to the ground, the straining metal that held Makuta's leg together split from the impact. The Toa continued to fight, and even as Makuta gleefully dodged and reciprocated each attack, his body began to slow. Despite being fully aware of the growing setback, he was totally unbothered by it.
He can't sustain this much longer.
Onua called.
Keep fighting!
Makuta's body continued to wear down. As he was preoccupied attacking Pohatu, Lewa struck from behind, cleaving clean through his midsection. His lower half crumbled into a broken pile of rusted litter as the green and black aura migrated into the upper half. What remained of the body hovered into the air as it continued to crudely reshape itself. Amplified by the beaming green radiation, the insides of the abused husk burst through every crack and gap, stretching like rolled clay into a hovering mass of oily tendrils. The loosened armor plating that broke away was kept in a swirling vortex that circled the obscene monstrosity.
Your attacks are pointless. I cannot be destroyed.
The twisting and slithering appendages extended toward Tahu. Each one he hacked off only reformed and branched out, quickly overwhelming him until he was forced to fall back. Kopaka swatted them away as he tried to outrun them, but was ultimately overtaken when they snagged his foot, wrapping and spiraling up his leg before lifting him into the air. Onua was grabbed from behind and dragged across the floor. He anchored his claws into the ground, but was uprooted and hurled into Lewa. Makuta snatched Pohatu off his feet, swinging him into the air before slamming his body into Gali. He then pulled Gali from the ground, dangling her upside down before she cut herself free. As she dropped toward the floor, another wiry tentacle plucked her from the air before flinging her into the wall. Even as he ran, Tahu continued to cut through the tendrils. He noticed every one that regrew was thinner than the last. Taking this observation into account, he stopped fleeing, standing his ground as he cleaved and sliced until the strength of the spindly extremities were stretched too thin to possess the strength to harm him, until they drew back altogether. This plan took much longer than he anticipated, but granted him the time he needed to focus on the swirling mass. He ignited his blade, unleashing a powerful blast of white-hot flames. Makuta was too focused on tormenting the other Toa that he hardly reacted to the assault. Tahu continued to pump more energy into his blade, causing the stream of fire to thicken.
Your persistence is amusing, Toa of Fire.
Lewa followed Tahu's tactic, chopping away at the oncoming tentacles until they had been totally spent. The task was exhausting, but the Toa of Air pressed on with an unrelenting hurricane blast from the end of his axe blade. The swirling pieces of armor and body parts that circled Makuta's form floated together to create a shield against the elemental attacks. Onua clawed through the waning tentacles until they could only uselessly tug at his arms and feet while he put his full focus into his power. He stabbed his claws into the floor. The ground shook as the pavement burst open above a trailing mound that ran beneath Makuta's position. With an assertive howl, Onua forced a geyser of dirt and mud to explode from the ground, pounding into the floating mass. Makuta groaned in irritation, slowly losing his control over the fight. He put his focus into the 3 remaining Toa, but only continued to spend what little strength remained in his deteriorating form. Pohatu activated his Kakama, allowing the tentacles to chase him as he ran a circle around Kopaka and Gali, intertwining the appendages as the other Toa cut through them. With none left to pursue him, Pohatu slammed his foot into the ground, sprouting a pillar of stone from the floor. He thrust his fist toward Makuta, commanding the stone to chip away into thousands of fragments of sharpened gravel that pelted against his enemy. Gali pressed her hooks together, summoning every drop of moisture she could conjure from within, blasting a forceful jet of water. Steam hissed into a blinding cloud as the blast made contact with the other 4 elements. Even with the combined efforts, Makuta remained unharmed, but had grown increasingly annoyed. This alone was enough to motivate the Toa to continue their assault.
No, not this.
Finally, Kopaka thrust his blade forward. A chill rippled through the air as a swirl of crystallizing energy coated its surface. A piercing stream of ice shot out from the tip of the blade. Even before the stream connected, Makuta began to draw back. What remained of the writhing tentacles retracted as the glowing aura quickly slipped away from the floating vortex the moment the elements collided. All traces of their shadowy foe had vacated the room. The Toa dispelled their power, leaving nothing but a corroded and decayed Kanohi Hau that crumbled to ash as it hit the floor. The Toa stood in defense long after the shadows of the room faded. The suffocating atmosphere that had plagued them since their descent had slipped away, until they were left standing silently around the dimly lit cavernous chamber, which produced only just enough illumination to draw attention to every crater, burn, crack, and giant footprint that accumulated along the pavement over the course of their mission.
Did we win?
Pohatu asked.
I no longer feel his presence.
Gali replied.
That seemed too easy,
said Onua. Tahu gave a quick glance around the room.
Onua's right. I fear we're only just getting started. But he now knows what he's up against. He might think twice before facing us again. Until then, we'll return to the surface. I've had enough of this place.